When we ask horses to race for us, pull our carriages, or compete in sports, what do we actually owe them in return? Well, today we're going to dive deep into an official government document that lays out the exact rules of care, our responsibilities to these amazing animals. So let's get into it and explore what it really takes to ensure their welfare, according to the law.
So, where are we getting all this from? Well, this is the real deal. It's Administrative Order Number 15 from the Philippines Department of Agriculture. And look, this isn't just a friendly list of suggestions. This is a formal legal framework. It sets the standard for how horses have to be treated across the entire country.
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with the core philosophy, this idea of the 5 freedoms. Then we'll see how these big ideas get put into practice in daily life, in the high-stakes world of the racetrack, and for working horses. And finally, we'll touch on the sensitive but really crucial rules for a horse's end of life.
First up, let's talk about the foundation for everything else. The entire regulation is built on this really simple but incredibly powerful ethical concept known as the 5 freedoms.
What's so interesting here is that these 5 points, this is basically the gold standard for animal welfare recognized all over the world. They set up a powerful baseline for a dignified life. We're talking access to food and water, a comfortable place to live, proper health care, the freedom to just, be a horse, and a life free from constant fear. This is really the heart and soul of the entire document.
Okay, so you have these big, noble ideas. But what do they actually look like in the real world? How do you turn them into practical, enforceable rules for day-to-day life? Well, that's where the standard of care comes in. This is where philosophy becomes action.
And that brings up a really important question, right? If the goal is to prevent pain and distress, what specific actions does the law say you just can't do? And believe me, the document gets very, very specific here.
First off, any kind of purely cosmetic, painful procedure is out. The law flat out forbids docking a horse's tail or trimming its ears unless there is a genuine, verified medical reason for it. The focus is 100% on the horse's well-being, not what a person thinks looks good.
The regulations also bring the hammer down on a practice called soring or firing. This is a truly abusive technique where chemicals or heat are used on a horse's legs to intentionally cause pain, all to force this exaggerated, unnatural way of walking. The law is crystal clear, absolutely forbidden.
And this is where you see just how detailed these rules get. A twitch is a tool for restraint, and it's normally applied to a horse's upper lip, but the law specifically says it can never be applied to the ears, which are incredibly sensitive. It's a way of preventing a common but really painful shortcut during handling.
Now, it's not just about what you can't do. The rules also professionalize the people providing the care. A farrier, that's the person responsible for a horse's hooves, has to be officially registered. This makes sure there's a standard of competence for what is one of the most critical parts of a horse's health.
Okay, let's switch gears and head to a place with high stakes and a whole lot of pressure, the racetrack. Given the intense physical demands, it's no surprise the regulations have a special section just for protecting these high-performance athletes. One of the most important protections is all about age. Racehorses can't compete until they're at least 2 years old, while polo ponies have to be at least 4, and that difference is huge. It recognizes the different physical strains of each sport and helps protect their young, still developing bodies from injuries that could end a career before it even starts.
And sometimes the document itself just says it best. Listen to this direct quote. It makes it clear that it's not just about winning, it's about how you win. The rules forbid using the whip too much during a race, and, this is so important, any use of it at all after the horse has already crossed the finish line.
And the list of protections goes on. For safety reasons, blind horses are generally not allowed to race. Sharp spurs are a definite no-go. And any horse that's showing any sign of injury or lameness has to be pulled from the competition. It all comes down to putting the animal's health first, right then and there, over the race itself.
But hey, it's not all about sports. The regulations also cover horses used for work and transport, like the famous calesa or carriage horses that you might see in cities. Their welfare matters just as much.
This is so crucial. A horse's job shouldn't determine its right to good care. The rules demand rest periods, they stop work during extreme heat, and they forbid overloading the carriages. There's even a specific rule for a moment of crisis. If a horse falls down, you are not allowed to whip it. Simple as that.
We're now at the final and maybe the most difficult part of the document. The regulations take on a really profound responsibility, making sure that a horse's welfare is protected throughout its entire life, right up to its very last moments.
And this is the guiding principle right here. If a horse is suffering from something that can't be cured, or a painful injury with no real hope of getting better, the law actually says it's cruel to force it to stay alive. In these cases, a humane end becomes the final act of kindness.
So how is this done? The document is very, very specific. It lists only 3 acceptable methods. And this is key. It makes it clear that these can only be performed by competent people with the right training. This isn't a task for just anyone. It takes real expertise to make sure it's done humanely.
And if you want to see just how serious and precise these rules are, just look at this. These are the actual diagrams from the document. They specify the exact point of entry and the exact angle for using a firearm. That level of precision is all about one thing: ensuring the end is as quick and humane as possible.
So from the 5 freedoms that give a horse a dignified life, all the way down to these incredibly precise diagrams that ensure a humane death, this document gives us one comprehensive answer. And it leaves us with a final big question to think about. When we use animals for our work and our entertainment, what really is the full extent of our responsibility to them, from their first day to their very last?